Hello and welcome to the Cyber Weekly. The Cyber Weekly is a show which talks about cybersecurity. We are joined by Angela, the co-host, long awaited. She's back now with Bashir, our guest, Bashir Semakula, a Ugandan, not in Uganda. So we are interested to know actually what is cooking out there. Otherwise, Angela, you can take it on.
Okay, so I'll give a brief introduction. We are privileged to host Bashir Semakula, who is a Ugandan-born cybersecurity professional working in Brisbane, Australia, and a co-founder of CyberElastic Proprietary Limited, where he serves as a virtual CISO and a security advisor. He has nearly 2 decades of experience working across sectors of government, finance, and nonprofits. Bashir has published expert commentary on fundamentals of security controls and contributed to cyber resilience discussions. Beyond work, Bashir is an avid runner, a cyclist, and has trekked the Everest base camp, making him the first Ugandan to do so. Bashir, you're welcome.
Thanks, Angela. Thanks, Dale. Thanks for having me.
Please tell us about yourself.
I should first appreciate Angela's OSINT skills. She's very good with open source.
Yes, that's very well done.
Well done.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bashir is a Ugandan, obviously. Ugandan born, Ugandan raised. Yeah, went to uni for my undergrad at Chambogo University, 2004 to 2007. And then I worked a bit for 1 year. Then 2009, when I did my master's in network and information security in London. And then 2010, returned to Uganda. And then 2011, went to Tanzania, where I stayed for 5 years until 2016. And then moved here. And I've been living in Brisbane for almost 10 years now, 10 years next year. So that's summary. Happy to take any follow-on questions on my background. Yeah.
Yes. Now the next question is, how did you get into cybersecurity?
So during my undergrad usually you study everything. So at Chambogo, there was a unit called network security, and it really intrigued my mind in terms of, okay, he's talking about security. How do you secure all of this stuff? So it was just one course on security, and I was really interested. So when I finished, I told my dad I'm really interested in doing the master's, but specializing in security. So I kept telling him for the next 2 years, even though I was sort of working, obviously, as when you finish uni, you're not earning enough yet to sponsor yourself. So I was lucky that I did, he did, get some money, sell a few plots, and then because he wanted to support that dream. And I think that's very important for parents out there, like, support your kids' dream. So in 2009, was when I stepped in London. It was winter, and I'm going to do my master's. So that's how I got into cybersecurity, really. Yeah.
Interesting. And which school did you go to in London?
So I went to Kingston University in London.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So what emerging opportunities and challenges are there in taking on virtual cybersecurity roles across borders, especially for professionals based in Africa?
I think the challenge we have in Africa is people don't believe that someone can do a virtual role. Basically, you don't sit in the office. If you do, you basically just go there once. People still have this belief that you have to be in the office and they have to employ you full time, work on their time, start at 8, finish at 5. there's very few roles, and I don't know whether they are in cyber, where you basically virtually you support IT managers or directors of IT to build their cybersecurity capabilities, but you don't do it while working for the organization. You work for the director virtually providing cybersecurity advice. So basically you're the CISO, but you're doing all the work through the director. So I think the challenge is in Africa, many countries, some countries might be an exception, maybe Kenya and maybe some Western African countries might be different, but they still believe that you still have to be in the office. People have to see you every day. You have to pretend to be working. This is what some people do. But they're missing out on the opportunity that someone can be anywhere in the world and provide you, first-class advice and help your organization to build capabilities to improve cybersecurity and that sort of thing. So I think it's a cultural problem, and I don't know whether it's a trust problem as well.
I was going to say people have trust issues.
Yeah, so
they need to see you.
They need to see you so they know you're working. But having done it here with different organizations, they don't even need to see you at all. As long as you deliver on the outcomes, you attend meetings that you have to, where you have to present, you can present. If they need you, if it's a high stakes sort of meeting and they request for you to go there, they'll fund your tickets, they'll fund your hotel, you go and you do the presentation and help get buy-in in some of the programs. So they do support all of that. And I think that's in Uganda, we haven't got to that level. So it's a big challenge. So it's mostly cultural and trust problems that are still hindering us getting, first-class advice.
Okay.
Yeah, that is true. But a bit of caveat of that, there are honorable mentions which are actually trying to push towards that. Before Umeme left, I talked to their team, and you find that most of the time they were actually at home when they were working most of the time. But with UEDCL, I'm not sure exactly what is going on because it's still a transition from Umeme to UEDCL as the official commercials company for distributing electricity. Then banks are also trying to do that, especially for some roles, but I'm not sure exactly how far they have gone in terms of that, because I've talked to some few and they're like, yes, we're actually trying to push towards doing that. But
see, I think after the pandemic, it paved way for virtual work.
It did a lot of paving way for that.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyways, so how can remote or hybrid cybersecurity roles be structured to ensure security, accountability, and collaboration across geographically distributed teams?
I mean, it's if you have the right, you need the right people to start. The right people with the right mindset and the right team. Without the right team, people will not be working basically. But I think to structure it well, first of all you have to structure it alongside outcomes. So if you say, for example, you're going to be monitoring incidents, for example, and the outcome is, say, incidents have to be actioned by, this number of times, and you have a system to monitor that, it's very easy to see that someone wasn't working. So I think there's systems that you can use to help you achieve, but also defining what good looks like in the virtual world. There's many people that even if you don't have to monitor them, they will do work. Like even here, there's people who work from home, but they barely work because all they do is, every now and then, as long as they are seen on Teams that they are online, especially in roles where it's not outcome based, as long as they see you on Teams, you're online, or, whatever platform that you're using, they know you're working. But so you need the right people with the right mindset and outcome best, rather if it's just, just do this and then whenever you finish it, So I think structuring such an environment, first of all, you need the right people in terms of whether they're capable, the mindset, and the drive that they have, and if they love what they do. If you have unmotivated people, working virtually is not going to work, basically. And then make it outcome. Have deliverables that this person is working against. And then the other thing I've seen that regular meetups, so it could be, either 2 times catch-ups, so just stand-ups to see, okay, team meets every Monday and every Friday to discuss, okay, what are we doing this week? If there's any issues, let me know at the end of the week. What what have you failed to do this week? How can we make it better next week, sort of thing. So if you structure it in that way, it's very easy. You're following up on deliverables. On beginning of the week, you're finding out what they are going to do, and then you say off you go. And then at the end of the week, you're saying, okay, what hasn't worked? X, why did you deliver this? That sort of thing. And then you're sort of getting into that the following week ready. So I think structuring it in that way, that there's regular meetups and you have the right people and people are driven. It's very easy to structure something that where you can work virtually and still achieve the same result as being in the office without the morning traffic, morning jam, and all the expenditure that goes with being in the office.
It's interesting. Do you know, I've always thought it's always better. It could be better to hire people in the different time zones to have like maybe 24 coverage in the SOC instead of having people working against their time zone because they are there physically. So if people are more people are open to outsourcing these roles, if people in Uganda are sleeping, people in Australia will be awake, and the team will keep on having 24-hour coverage. I think moving forward, companies should look into that.
Yes, there's companies here that have a global SOC. So a global SOC is a SOC that is available 24/7. So they have people based here in Australia. So those would work 8 hours and then they pass it on to another team in another country.
Exactly.
So if it's a Western country, they will also work 8 hours and then they pass it on to another team. So it's a global SOC, it's 24/7. The SOC is a capability that is not 8 to 5. It's a 24/7 job. So you have to have a way to have that capability up 24/7. If you're having people working in the night, they might be sleeping half of the time because unless really they have
there's something about night shift that doesn't go well with me.
Yeah, so it's difficult to do if it's not time zone. But hey, some organizations are yet to get there. But also it's for organizations it's what makes financial sense. Like why would we outsource to Australia where we have to pay 3 or 4 times the amount we're paying in Uganda? Why don't we just have more people so that some can work at night, others work during the day, and then at the same salary, basically.
I understand.
So it's a financial decision.
It is. Okay. And from your experience, how do international cybersecurity standards like ISO 27001 and NIST translate differently in practical terms between developed countries like Australia and developing ones like Uganda?
I think in developing countries, they use it as a compliance tool. And, you have to tick every box and cross every T and dot every I, basically. But compliance to these standards doesn't necessarily mean you're more secure. It means you're compliant to that standard. So here, they use it as a guide to show maturity. But actually, what's more important is resilience. So there's 2 things: there's cybersecurity and there's cyber resilience. So organizations that follow the standards are more compliance-based or compliance-driven, are more compliance-driven or have compliance programs because they have to make sure they tick every box or have everything said in the standard.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other side, cyber resilience organizations, the programs are developed around making sure that they can recover quickly, making sure that they can respond quickly, making sure they can minimize impact to the organization, minimize impact to the business operations. So because everything is money driven, if a system that generates money, for example, I'll give an example of Amazon. So Amazon, I can't remember how, when I last checked, I think every minute it makes a certain amount of money. So for example, let's say 10,000 for every minute. Now, if it's down and it's been DDoSed and it's down for 1 hour, that's very easily 600,000. So an organization like Amazon is more focused on resilience. How quickly can they identify, respond, and recover? So all their programs will be driven around that. Obviously they can benchmark against the standard to say, okay, we are ticking these boxes. They might not tick every box because they might say this box, especially for the ISO 27001 standard, they might say this standard here is not applicable to our business, for example, because some of the clauses might not be applicable to them. So, but what I see in developing countries, it is a tool for auditors to come and check, do you have this? Do you have a policy? They don't actually care whether that, everything in the policy is actually in practice. Very few check that. All they check is you have the security policy tick, you have the acceptable use policy tick, you have such and such policy tick. And they might look at, you have the firewall, you have this, and then they might go and write a report that you have ticked all the boxes. But in resilience wise, you might not be, you might be still at foundations, basically. So what they developed wider have changed and still changing as well, that they're thinking of cybersecurity in terms of resilience. So everything, they start with resilience instead of just making sure it's secure, because the truth is nothing is absolutely secure. So that's the reality. You cannot be absolute secure. So they're more focused in how can they respond quickly, identify quickly, respond quickly, and recover very quickly. So that's where that's where the differences are.
Okay.
Yes, it's true. There's no such thing as 100% security, especially with organizations. Well, there's always this funny joke of when you go and ask for a budget for cybersecurity, then they ask you, will we not be hacked? After buying all these solutions. And it's interesting, they always expect that nothing will happen. Yeah. So, what are some of the major implementation gaps you've observed between Uganda and Australia, particularly in governance, infrastructure, or culture readiness, when it comes to adopting international cybersecurity regulations like GDPR or ISO?
I think most countries, obviously there's some countries that are exception, but most countries are not ready for some of these standards. So because some of these standards are international standards, but they are not mandated within most countries. So unless an organization has a branch, say for example in EU, and has a branch in one African country, so then they might say GDPR is applicable to them. So they might apply it because of GDPR. So it means if they have any information of someone who stays in Europe, then it's mandated that they implement GDPR. But normal everyday organization, it's not mandated for them. So most of them would use it as a best practice tool rather than a must-do sort of tool. So that's one problem. So even when the auditors come, they have something to say, but they will not say, this standard, you must adopt this standard, because there's nothing anywhere in the standard that says all organizations that have IT must adopt or must abide by everything in the standard. So that's one problem. So the other one is at the national level. So most countries have not mandated, despite the fact that many organizations are hosting a lot of our data. They have our national IDs, they have our name, they have everything. They have copies of our national passports. They have numbers, everything. They have not mandated that if you are going to have such information, you must do ABCD. I know for some fintech companies, like for example in Uganda, the Bank of Uganda has mandated some controls that they must meet some standards, but it doesn't apply across the board. Like it's not, if you're not a fintech, some of this doesn't apply to you. So that's the second thing. The third thing is, a few acts or legislation by the government, like say the Privacy Act, that haven't been implemented or enforced by organizations, yet the act says it very clearly that all organizations that do X, Y, and Z must put this act in place. So there's no enforcement of that act, just like any other, countries like Uganda have very good laws, but the implementation is a problem. So there's no enforcement of such very good legislation, by the way. So organizations take it for granted. So unless the government sort of comes in and says, everyone must do and you must report, just like the Bank of Uganda has done, unfortunately, it's still a big problem. So, and I think it's a cultural problem. Most countries are in that boat, and I think African countries will eventually get there, but I think it's still a very long road to go. But I think mostly that's what I think is the issue. Most of it is the government mandating some of these standards, and because they are international standards. It's difficult to enforce an international standard unless you embed it in another maybe government mandate to say you must align your cybersecurity practice against NIST, for example. Yeah.
That's interesting. We have talked about it severally on the show, about even reporting when there's an incident. Most organizations will see it as reputational damage, other than doing what they're supposed to do. You're mandated to report this within, I think, 96 hours or 72 hours of the incident. But then also enforcing. I think there are limited funds of enforcing, like that data protection and privacy act. When someone breaches it, we've not seen someone being arrested. Like, okay, in Uganda, I don't know. Deo, have you seen?
No, but I also feel like at the same point, like there's always that fear of an organization. Let's say if a bank
reputation
is hit,
damage.
We don't know if the person who you're telling in the government won't leak out the information, because you will find that there's that fear that maybe the information will be leaked out. And definitely that is a bigger fear compared to, the hit itself. So at some point, it's more like a catch-22 kind of situation for an organization.
So what they have done here is, for all breaches, organizations are mandated to report if a breach exposes personal identifiable information. So you have to report that within 30 days. So initially you can do a preliminary report to say, yep, we understand that we have been compromised, because eventually, and because there are penalties also if you don't, because eventually people will find out, because that data will be available, will be available, and then the government will be coming knocking on your door, and then you get fined. So I think the fines here, if it's proven that you did not do everything you can to stop this breach, is about $80 million. So it's really steep. So, and then again, I think if you're found not to have reported, again, it's another. And there've been a few companies that have been stung by that that requirement. But I think as cybersecurity professionals here, we're really wanting the enforcement to be even greater, because we're seeing some organizations taking some of these breaches by not taking it seriously. But I think in Uganda, a lot of it is swept under the carpet, which is not a good thing, because it means you can still go on and people's information is out there and they don't know, basically. Like if you're a bank and because you collect all this information to identify people, to give them accounts and all of this, if it's found that information was compromised and you did not tell people, and people find out later that their names are being used to do identity theft or any sort of crime, it will be very, very bad. So yeah, I think it's just a matter of time. I think government will kick in at some point. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I have a feeling it will come sooner than later because I'm seeing the regulation leaning towards that, and especially the work which NITA is doing towards making some of those changes would definitely spark some of that.
Yeah.
So I wanted to dive into also your CISO role compared to the CISOs you've seen in country here and now you acting as a virtual CISO. Definitely you interact with so many. What are those things that you see at unique in the two types of people?
You mean CISO and virtual CISO?
No, I'm meaning CISOs in country and those in other countries, and what makes them stand out to you?
I think apart from a few, I know a few in Uganda. I think the big difference is really the influencing and leadership skills that the two have. So most CISOs that have met in Uganda, some of them are Western educated, but there's a few that really can do influencing really well. So you still find that some companies still have small security teams, because if you have a CISO that cannot influence the executive to give better funding, does not communicate what the issues are, it's difficult to grow the team, difficult to have the capabilities. But also, I think some of them are very most of them might be technical, which is good, but it's important to have that leadership, but also influencing skills. So I think the biggest difference is the breadth of the role as well. So you find that most CISOs in country in Uganda are either reporting through the IT manager or the director IT. And here is still the case in some roles, but most CISOs here report directly to the CEO, and they have access to the board. So they go to board meetings and report, give their presentations there. But in country, most of them report to the director IT, and then it's the director that takes everything, including stuff from operations and all of that. So presents everything. So I think that's the difference. And also the role of the CISO there might be a bit limited. They might have, they might have a governance arm. They might have a analysis of security operations. They might not have architecture yet. This is a key component of CISO's reporting, because security architecture is a very important capability. So again, there are other things like threat intel, which I know many CISOs don't have that capability built. They might have, security awareness, it's not big enough. It might be once in a year sort of training. Everyone, come and do the training, and then we do it again next year. So I think the breadth of the role as well is a bit limited. But I think it's a sign that the organizations are slowly growing, because I think even Australia wasn't here 10, 20 years ago. So it's just going to get better. So there's a few differences. Obviously, there's organizations that are a bit better, but it might be because that they have exposure, or they have organizations, their parent organizations are based somewhere in the West. Apart from the financial services, where they try to do the right thing because they are very heavily regulated. So they try to get appropriate, highly skilled and knowledgeable people. Other sectors are more like, we'll do our best with what we have. Yeah.
Does that now, when it comes to CyberElastic, is that one of the reasons why you co-founded it? And what was the target market, and what were you trying to solve?
So I think what I solve is mostly trying to make security simple and affordable. So because once you communicate well and you simplify the problem of the client, and depending on how much capacity they have and how much resources they are willing to spend, you can build a program that is very simplified. So my target was to help organizations that don't have this sort of people for various reasons. They don't have a person with the right skill set to help, or either because they cannot afford a full-time one, because very easily they require very high fees. I think we're talking from around $200,000 in a year. If you cannot afford that, maybe you can afford, half of that every year for someone who will be there for one day a week, for example, to provide advice. So that's the idea, because there's many organizations that cannot afford these people. So that's my target. That was my target, and it's still my target.
Interesting. So community cybersecurity awareness remains low in many parts of Africa. What strategies have you seen work well in building public awareness and resilience against threats like phishing and scamming or misinformation?
I think, again, because if you are, I think organizations, especially those that hold their information, they have a responsibility to protect their community or their members. But also the government has that responsibility to create awareness of how people use their data, who they give their data, and how they can hold them to account. So what I've seen work here is the government has resources that it updates every year for anyone to access, of how to protect themselves, how to protect their computers, how to enable MFA on their Gmail, or how to enable MFA for whatever tool, but also ongoing sort of awareness on that website. So I think that sort of having those resources available, I think, helps. But also you have to understand the culture of the community you're dealing with. Most, like in Uganda, most people don't like reading. So the information might be there, and maybe places like NITA might have those resources, but who will go to NITA to read those things? So it might be that you change the approach. How do you provide that knowledge. Maybe put it on TikTok, put it on TV, or, go where the people are, basically, to provide them this information. So having from a national level, having an ongoing awareness, because governments have access to information, what are some of the threats people are facing, how are they affected, so they can use this to create a campaign and, go online, go on TikTok, go on Facebook, or go on Twitter, go on TV, so people can see this message and they can change this message as the threats or the threat landscape changes. So you update it. So that's at the government level. That's the mandate of the government. So if going to companies like, banks where we give all our information, NITA, or the national ID company, I don't know what it's called,
NIRA. Yeah.
NIRA, they have a responsibility as well that, how do you educate people? How do you use your national ID? The NIN now is everything, but people need to be made aware that, the NIN is a very critical document. A very critical number. You don't just give it away. You don't flash. You don't just keep flashing it. Nowadays, you go to a photocopier anywhere. You photocopy. People can photocopy and remain with a copy. I remember a few years ago, I went and did a photocopy somewhere where I can't remember the place, but right now they have built a big mall. I think it was Pioneer Mall.
Pioneer Mall.
I went and did a photocopy there, and the copies that came out did not come out well, so the lady repeated them, and then after that, I requested for the others as well, and I was very insistent because I know that's my PII. I don't want to leave you with my PII. I don't want you to go and use it to to wrap mandazi in, and then you give it to the next person. So I was very insistent. So people need to be made aware that the documents that they give away hold personal, identifiable information. So that's a responsibility of places like NIRA. Banks have that responsibility as well. When their threat landscape changes, inform your customers on an ongoing basis. Don't wait when you're hacked and then you start sending messages out of the blue. Make sure you protect this, and people will start suspecting, or is this why we're getting these messages? Is it what we've been hearing? Is it true? So I think it's an ongoing. So every organization that we give our information, schools, universities, everyone has a responsibility to sensitize and create awareness of its customers, its people, its students, even every citizen of the country.
That's true.
Definitely. So I want to dive more into your work at CyberElastic, especially because now you have different organizations which you'll be serving, and they all come with a different maturity level. So can you walk us through a typical onboarding process for a client, and what you usually consider, and what are those areas which you help the client with?
So it all varies. So client might ask you to come and assess the maturity for ISO, ISO 27001, and then you go into work on that, and then obviously you're doing an audit. You're looking at what they have and what they don't have, and then at the end of that, you give them a report. And then you walk them through the report, and then you're giving them the quick wins as well. You're saying these are very things that you can change these things very quickly. So some organizations take that and say, oh, we need you to come and help us with these quick wins. So onboarding them means, you look at what they have done. You understand, their internal resources they have. You look at their operating model. You look at, their budgeting structure. When do they cycle? When do they sort of have funding? You look at how big their team is. What's the appetite to have an extra few resources? This is through discussion as well. So you meet different stakeholders. So a lot of the initial stages is talking to different stakeholders. And then when you come out to give advice, it's not generic advice. It's really customized to that organization, because for the past 2 weeks, you've been meeting different people, looking at different reports. So now you know the organization, because as an experienced professional, you know the right question. You're not wasting time. You know the right questions to ask. You know the right people to meet. At the end of the 2 weeks, you're talking to this person to say, okay, I think this should be our approach. And we're going to need this, we're going to need that. And then you get to work. In other places, they're a bit mature. You know, they have a IT security team, but they need someone at senior above that team to sort of help the director create that link, translate things from technical to more business focused, you know, write the reports, you know, coordinate what they're doing, and then help the IT director with reporting to the executive or the board. So most of the technical team or some of the junior team members may not be senior at that level. So once they get you in, again, it's the same process, talking to the different steps, talking to the team, you know, where do they see the gaps and what are some of the challenges. So depending on what the client wants, so you look at what's obviously the first thing is to understand the environment and, you know, who key stakeholders, who makes the big, who are going to be the blockers. You understand them beforehand, and then it's basically you come up with a strategy of approach or angle of attack within the first 2 weeks by talking to people. So that's the usual onboarding process. And then others, you know, they have something very specific. They want you to do just an audit. So you go in, you do an audit, and that's all. But that's security advisory, but it's not vCISO. So vCISO is usually at leadership and strategy level, and executive support is where you come in. But so it's usually in a part-time capacity, 1 or 2 days a week for a specific period of time. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that.
So, and finally, what advice would you give to African CISOs or aspiring professionals who want to make a mark both locally and on the global cybersecurity stage?
I think to the CISOs, I mean, they need to expand their horizons and understand the market in Uganda might not be ready, but I think, you know, maybe even going to the, you know, next door, Kenya, may expand that horizon, because I find that in Uganda we do the bare minimum. The bare minimum meaning not all organizations, obviously, but we do the minimum as long as, you know, we can still hide incidents. Everyone's going to do the bare minimum. So that's to them. Like any other professionals, I think emphasize technical skills. You know, there's a lot of, I know in Africa, we like certifications quite a lot, but I think emphasizing the technical skills, I think, is important for anyone that wants to have a mark in the cybersecurity space. Like nothing is going to beat experience with tools or cloud platforms or, you know, AI or whatever from a cybersecurity space. So I think it's important. I mean, the certifications are important because in Uganda, the hiring is mostly based off that. You know, they assume once you have the certifications, you're qualified, but it's not the case. The other thing I think is have a mentor. If you're a security professional, get a mentor to sort of guide you. You know, it could be an in-person, in-country CISO, someone that you look up to, you admire from what they have achieved. Get someone to mentor you, point you in the right direction. Don't be running blind in the dark without knowing where you're going. You know, the cybersecurity is quite a broad space. And I know in Uganda, in some roles, they expect you to do everything. For example, in security operations, or as an analyst, maybe they expect him to do the threat intel, they expect him to do intelligence, they expect him to do threat hunting, forensics. Everything is just the one person. It's highly impossible. These are all highly specialized skill sets that, you know, you really have to know what you're doing to really do a good job. So
I can neither confirm nor deny.
yes. So, but I know because I've been there. So it's important to have a mentor in your space, and it's useless or it's pointless trying to know everything. You know, bits and pieces of the area you're in. So, for example, in analysis, you might know what forensics is. You might be able to use some of the tools. And maybe, you know, threat intel a little bit, you know, operational, technical, and strategic. But because if your role is analysis, it's a highly specialized skill set that when you identify this is abnormal, you have all the playbooks, you follow the playbooks, you know, you respond and, you know, you help. So it's a highly specialized skill set. So I think specializing in one area or two areas, that become very good in those areas. And you might know there's people in Uganda that every organization calls onto them when stuff hits the fan, basically, because they have really specialized in that one area. And they are basically unemployable, because if you employ them, they'll ask for a very high salary. So companies are like, oh, we wait. When we have a problem, we call you to come and solve our problem, and then we pay you, and then you go off. So having a mentor sort of helps you direct your efforts effectively, because you're not going to know everything. You know, cybersecurity is quite broad. But I find that in Uganda, companies expect you to do everything.
No, but even your workmates, sometimes as IT, you find your workmates are asking you to fix a printer, and that's
yeah.
So it's a culture thing. Awareness.
Yeah, culture thing. culture thing. So, I mean, having a mentor, especially if you want to go in the cybersecurity space, they point you in the direction, because as a mentor or a coach, they will understand what you know, your personality, what are some of your inherent capabilities, your personality. They understand some of the skill sets that you have as well, to help you, direct you in a path that you'll do well. So so that's what they can help you. The other thing that upcoming professionals that they need to know is they need to have their handle on the soft skills. You know, out here, the most important thing here are the soft skills. Like, how do you relate with your peers? How do you work with others? Collaboration to make things happen, because cybersecurity touches everything within IT, basically. So if you're not able to collaborate or work with others or build a team, or things are not going to work for you. So those soft skills are really important. The other thing is the communication. You know, you really have to be very clear, very succinct to communicate, even in your emails, that when you write, you know, don't write meandering emails, tell a story, you know, just go straight to the point, especially if you're writing to an exec. They don't have time to read the long emails. Straight to the point, very summarized, and, you know, very business focused rather than technical focus. You know, if you're
is it more of bluff?
You know, they don't want bluff. They don't have time. You know, if the metric is number of incidents we've handled this month, and the average time to respond, just give them those. Don't, you know, give story. If he wants story, he might come back with questions. You know, how come last month we did, you know, 20 minutes minimum time to recover, and this month is 30 minutes, you know. So it's just those communication skills, which I find in Uganda we don't put our focus on. But they're key, and for promotion, this is what people are looking for, not the technical skills. Well, obviously, some organizations will look at the technical skills, but if you're able to express yourself, communicate well, build a team, you can collaborate, you definitely get that promotion.
Yes, I think you are trying to mean bluff, which is bottom line up front. When I just joined and I was seeking more knowledge about how to communicate better. I learned about bluff, which is like a military thing, which comes from the military. But basically, what happens is key information should be put in front in the email, in the body of the email. The first information you put is the key one, then the rest you can now put in those other things, the fancy words and all that, but key message first. Otherwise, these people don't have time for your stories. Your story.
Yeah.
Anyways, so in the final shots, parting shots, if someone, because now you've been communicating with multiple organizations, top different maturity levels, if someone now wants to get a one-on-one with you, especially when it comes to the role of a CISO, how can they reach you? We are in the parting shot, so how can they reach you, and how do they set up a meeting with you to start off?
So my primary contact is LinkedIn. So if you go on my LinkedIn, you go to my about. So I have a Calendly links there. So if you're reaching out for consulting, there's my link. And if you're reaching out for coaching, there's a different link as well. So for those who would like to contact me for virtual CISO services, go to my LinkedIn, and then you can go to my about. So within about, you see there's a calendar link if you're reaching out for virtual CISO. So there's the link is there. You book time. My calendar is always up to date. I'm more than happy to speak to you about the service that you need and let you know how I can help you.
Thank you for that. Any final thoughts you have for our audience?
First of all, I would like to thank the both of you, Angella and Deo, for reaching out. And young people like myself, I was a few years ago. So I think to me this is very important for you as well, because you're learning a lot of things that your peers out there are not. So that's very commendable, and this is building your profile as well, because it's demonstrating the desire to learn, the desire to meet people, to learn new things from others, from professionals, from experienced professionals in your sector. So it's really commendable. The other thing is I would encourage people to network a lot, and podcasts like this are part of networking. So I would encourage people to, professionals to network. I think people make the mistake of when they finish uni, they just want to apply for jobs. They use their degree to apply for jobs, and then they say, I'm not getting jobs. It's really difficult to apply and get jobs that way. Most of the jobs you get through the network. Go to ISACA events, go to any meetup that is about cybersecurity. You might meet people there who are looking for someone who is driven like yourself. So, make sure you network, make sure you go where people who do what you want to do meet up. Anywhere that they meet up, make sure you go. So I understand it's really hard initial, but it's important to go where they are. You ask them questions, and you might find your mentor there as well. So that's really important. And I encourage people, if they have any questions, reach out to me. One of the things that I do here, we have a lot of Ugandans that come here to study. I mentor many of them, help them settle in, help them, show them how to find their first role here, and how to navigate the industry, because the industry back home and here are quite different. So help them understand the market here and how they can sort of get that first role. Because I know, they are Ugandans, they are really capable, because I believe Ugandans, we are very capable and highly educated. But sometimes it's understanding the dynamics of the land and how you navigate that. So I really help them to learn to understand the market. So I think in general that's all I can say. And thanks everyone, and all the listeners. Happy for anyone to contact me via LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to chat when I have the time. And yeah.
Thank you for your kind words, Bashir. Thank you for your time. And we shall be wishing out soon.
Yes.
Yes. Angela, can you close us up?
No, there you close.
So Bashir, thank you for reaching out. We had scheduling issues, but we succeeded in actually scheduling.
We are a global SOC.
We are now a global SOC team. So yes. So thank you for making this happen. And I've definitely learned a lot, especially when it comes to the vCISO role and also all those dynamics which play a part on the cybersecurity and maturity level. Those are key areas which I usually look out to find out more. And the fact that you are building a platform where people actually can get to learn more about this, which it's quite intriguing and also interesting, and definitely I know many people will appreciate what you are offering as a CyberElastic. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks, Dale. Thanks, Angela. Thanks for having me. And
thank you.
Have a good rest of the day.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. For our guests, for our audience, be sure to subscribe. All in all, see you all in the next episode.